So, all you Tony Awards fans, we're just a few hours after nominations have been announced. I'm Paul Sheehan, executive editor of Gold Derby. I know a little bit about the Tony Awards, but I'm with two people who know a lot about the Tony Awards, David Buchanan and Sam Ekman. And in fact, David got the best score of anyone predicting the Tony Awards, not just among people that had Gold Derby or the experts, but I mean, every single person. And Sam did almost as well. Not quite, almost as well. And then I'm far behind them. So listen, I asked them the other day, we talked about Tony Award nominations. They told me what I should predict, and I made the mistake of not listening to them then, but I'm not going to make the mistake again now. So David, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful that you did so well predicting the nominations, but now we care about the winners. So let's get into who's going to win. What's going to win Best Musical?
I think it's a 2 to 3 horse race right now. I think the only one that's probably out of the picture is Groundhog Day in terms of a win. Although it did well in nominations, I think it has 7 overall. I think it'll be a contest between the sentimental favorite, Dear Evan Hansen, versus the kind of technical achievement of Great Comet, which has the most nominations of any show at the Tonys this year. But we've seen in the past that alone doesn't necessarily carry a show to a win. So I think they're both strong. They both performed as well as we thought they would today. So I think it's a little early to call a winner. I think it's kind of it's a really strong race between the two. And Come From Away did really well in nominations today as well. And that could be a dark horse. So I think it's really between those three. And I'm going to be non-committal right now since it's the day of.
And Sam?
I agree. Congrats on first place, David.
Thank you.
I will say I still did better than all the experts, so I'm going to hold on to my bragging rights for 13th place.
You did.
I don't think we should count out Come From Away yet, though.
Yeah.
I think it's still definitely in there. I think the musical is just like cathartic is the word I keep using to describe it to people. It deals with tough subject matter in a not tough way, in a way that's really uplifting and inspiring. And I think something that people go in and they just are like, oh, I so needed this story right now. And I think that's pretty powerful. I think it still does have a chance. I have it in second place right now. I have it winning Best Book of a musical.
Me too. Me too.
I do still think Dear Evan Hansen is still the front runner. That's what I'm predicting as of right now. But I could see Dear Evan Hansen, Come From Away, or The Great Comet taking it. And Groundhog Day should be proud of itself because they did a lot better than a lot of people thought they would with 7 nominations.
And do you think that it's sort of evocative of maybe Once that did win Best Musical a few years ago? I mean, a sort of a smaller chamber piece versus a big lavish musical.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think The Great Comet is going to do well. I have Rachel Chavkin currently #1 for director of a musical. And I think it's going up against Dolly for a lot of the design awards, and I think it will be very competitive for those on the design end. I don't know that it'll have the same emotional weight like Once did. And so I think that's where Dear Evan Hansen and Come From Away both have a little bit of a leg up, whereas people are dazzled by the spectacle of The Great Comet. They're more emotionally invested, I think, in Come From Away and Dear Evan Hansen. So yeah, the once comparison is pretty spot on.
And what do you, so with Great Comet, how surprised, David, were you that how well it did in the nominations? I mean, you did well with your predictions, but did you miss some of those nominations that Great Comet got? I mean, it got 12.
No, I think I overshot it a bit because I had it getting in featured actress a slot that I thought it would get. Between there were 2 women that I thought could get a nod there, and I picked one of them, and I think maybe perhaps the 2 of them being there maybe split the vote. I had that one in place of Mary Beth Peele, who I had until like 1:30 in the morning, and
until David and I started texting late at night.
You know, at one point I did tell you, I said, "Oh no!" I said, "I'm wavering on Mary Beth Peil. I'm taking her out, and now I'm ruining it. But that's okay. So I thought it would do really well. It did as well. I think we probably both expected it would be the nominations leader, just because, like I said, technically, you knew it would get into a lot of those categories. It's such a landmark achievement, and such innovative staging. So, like I said, though, I don't know if that will translate to a win, that it has the most nominations, but it has 2 more than Dolly does, and Dolly is probably the most beloved production, or one of the season. So it certainly did as well as we thought it would.
And isn't it interesting, like in the Oscars now, since they've gone to the preferential ballot, the old ways don't necessarily follow through, but it used to be Best Picture and Best Director kind of went hand in hand. So I think maybe at the Tony Awards, there's not as much, it's not lockstep, right? Like the Best Directed musical may not win Best Musical.
Well, you're going to see at least 2, because the revivals and the musicals, and on the plays and the revivals, the directors are in one category. So last year we saw The Humans won Best Play without winning director. It happens a lot. So I don't think that would necessarily be a strike against, let's say, Dear Evan Hansen winning Best Musical if Great Comet wins direction, which I currently think it will. So yeah, I don't think that doesn't have any bearing on what'll win the top prize necessarily.
And so Sam, I mean, you mentioned Dear Evan Hansen the other night too. I mean, do you still think, seeing the nominations today, do you think that the leading man, I think it's Ben Platt, he's going to win still, or are you more hesitant?
I'm pretty hesitant on that one. That's turned into, was a sure thing. It's turned into a pretty exciting race, I think. With 7 nominations, it's not like Groundhog Day was just like a placeholder 4th place nominee. They really liked it and really went for it. And I think if there's a space to reward it against these 3 other frontrunners, then Best Actor might be the place where they do it. And Andy Karl, like working through his injury, I don't think you can get better press than that, and more of a rooting factor. They've earned a lot of goodwill for that. I think he's really in the running. I have him in 2nd place right now, but I will probably switch him and Ben Platt several times before the winners are announced.
And then, David, do you think that, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, it's completely gone.
I can make a comment and let you retrack your thoughts. I would say, when Sam said that Groundhog Day did really well with 7 nominations, I agree. It really impressed in its performance. But the one thing that I'm kind of irked about, and it's not against Groundhog Day at all, but you would get the sense looking up and down this list that there were only 4 really good musicals that opened this season. And this season was such an incredibly strong season for musicals and plays. I would have loved to have seen more musicals get in these categories, where Best Musical, Best Book, Best Score all have the same 4 musicals in there, when you can think of 4 more to put in, mix and match in those categories and others. So that's a bit disappointing, and I just wanted to point that out, that there's been ample amount of phenomenal shows this year, and it's kind of sad that they didn't get more representation in the nominations.
Yeah, that was my biggest disappointment, I think, looking at them, was how consolidated they were. I didn't expect it to be both on plays and musicals. You have things like Sunset Boulevard, Significant Other, The Encounter, which was completely shut out. Which is surprising that there were certain things that didn't even get 1 or 2 nominations. They were just completely shafted.
And last year we saw a lot of shows get 1. Like almost every show was represented, except for I think there were only a few, if any, that didn't get at least 1 nomination. And this year the list is really long.
And actually, I was smiling when you guys were both speaking, because that actually was my question, that the nominating committee had the latitude, if there'd been a 5th musical that they liked almost as much as those 4, it would have gotten a nomination. So I think that's interesting, that it wasn't a fixed number in those categories, and the fact that they chose to go with the fewer number tells you they really like those four, and the rest of them they were indifferent to at best. I think now we speculated maybe Bette Midler wouldn't get nominated. Well, she did. I speculated. I think you two both thought I was crazy. So now, is it a slam dunk? I mean, she's winning, Sam?
Yeah. I mean, the distance between first and second place in that category is pretty enormous. The person I put in second place behind her is Ava Noblezada, who I said last night, I know she's getting in, I just don't know whether to take out Danae Benton or Laura Osnes, and it was Laura Osnes. But I think Ava Noblezada has, outside of Bette Midler, the best narrative, offstage narrative, in terms of being, this unknown who was sort of plucked to be the star of this musical with her superpowered voice. But Bette Midler there's no way that anyone comes close, I don't think.
Yeah, when I was making my predictions for the winners this afternoon, I was kind of battling who to put like second and third, and moving Christine and Patty and Denis up and down. And I said, why am I bothering spending so much? Like, why am I doing this? Like, this is so stupid. Like, I should not even just leave Bet and move on. So yeah, it's pretty safe.
And then on the supporting, I know, Sam, you're a big fan of falsettos. And so how likely do you think it is that both Andrew Reynolds and Stephanie Block could win?
I have winning. Maybe it's just my theater nerd and fandom for her that's propelling me there, but I think her number was one of my favorite moments of the entire season so far. I definitely think, it's gone, but it wasn't like it closed because the show failed miserably and was critically reviled or anything. It was a limited run. It was billed as a limited run, and it finished it. And, a lot of people came in to see it. I think it ran long enough for out-of-town voters to come and see it. And, if she wants to get out there and do the rounds, she can win. I do think she's competitive. I mean, Rachel Bay Jones is certainly also pretty formidable for dear Evan Hansen and could easily take it, but I have Stephanie SJB finally winning. Gavin Creel, I think, is probably going to take featured actor. Reynolds, only Andrew Reynolds, maybe one of them could pull through, but I think it'll be harder for the actors from falsettos.
And that's the thing, isn't it, David? Like what Sam was just saying, that the nominating committee, the 51 people on that, they live in New York. They commit to seeing every show when it opens. But the voters, the 800 plus voters, some of them, as you mentioned, don't live in town. They're the road producers. They're regional theater people. So if they're planning their trip to New York and they've missed falsettos, they don't have any chance to see it. So then they go see Dolly, and they see Gavin Creel, perhaps, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm sure Andrew Reynolds was great, but look, this is Gavin Creel's time. So, David, what do you think, David, for supporting featured actor, in a musical?
Featured actor, right now I'm kind of struggling between Gavin Creel and Lucas Steele, and we kind of talked about Lucas last night. I think if it wins an acting category, it's not going to be Josh Groban. It's definitely not going to be Denis Benton. It could win featured actor. I haven't seen the show yet. I see it next week, so I can weigh in on his performance in particular, but there seems to be a lot of passion around his performance and the way that he carries a lot of the show. And that could be a place where they award Great Comet in an acting category, where they're going to probably award Dear Evan Hansen in actor, and Dolly in actress. So maybe they do Great Comet here. So I'm on the fence though, because Gavin Creel, there's a lot of positive to be said about his performance and his stature in the industry. It could be his time, just like it's Stephanie J. Block's time as well.
And then over on the play side, I was surprised, given that they were Pulitzer Prize winners, that Sweat and by Pulitzer Prize winners, that neither Sweat nor Indecent really backed up a lot of nominations. What about you? What about you, Sam? What did you make of that?
mean, I knew it could happen for Indecent because the actors, it's styled as a band of players taking on multiple roles, which always kind of hurts actors when their Tony chances come around. They're giving phenomenal performances, and I wish at least one of them had been nominated. Possibility that it would get into Best Play and miss out. I also like the Sweat was another ensemble show where everyone was below the line. I made a crazy call last night that I was going to take Kate Horsky out of director for Sweat, which felt crazy, but that was my gut instinct, and I refused to let. I think she was ranked #1 in our odds.
She was, yeah.
But there were just so many strong contenders for that category, and I was like, someone really in contention is going to be left out. And her plays have more of a like clear, obvious concept behind them versus Sweat, which she did a good job directing, but doesn't seem like it has some directorial concept outside of what is written into the script. So, I mean, I think Indecent is still, because everything in Best Play could win, I have Sweat strangely ranked last right now. I think so.
Yeah, well, I got to mention on Sweat, I mean, you were at a Tony Award spotlight for us on one of the people that ended up being nominated, right, Sam?
Yeah, for Michelle Wilson. That was really awesome. I was glad that because I've banged the drum for a lot of people, but I wanted to have a successful Tony morning, and she was one of them. And you know, that category was crazy. Last night I spent far too much time switching people out of the last slots there. That could have gone to like 10 different women. So I'm glad that 2 actresses from the same play could get recognized.
And David, do you think that, I mean, Doll's House Part 2, I mean, that got all 4 people in the cast got nominated. How important do you think it is that it was one of it was the last show to open this season? I mean, the nominating committee would have seen it only several days before meeting. I mean, is that something like we always think at the Oscars, or in the old days, you used to come out at Christmas and you'd do much better. Do you think that's how they got a bit of a boost from the timing on the schedule?
Yes and no. So it obviously didn't help Bandstand that much that Bandstand opened the last musical of the season to open, but I think what helped is in and of itself, the quality of the play is fantastic, and opening later in the season probably helped it secure a slot over some of the really good plays that opened earlier that were probably sitting right on the line. Like Sam had mentioned Significant Other, I had mentioned Heisenberg. Had Doll's House opened, I still think Doll's House would have gotten in if it opened a month or 2 earlier, just because it's one of the most acclaimed plays of the season. But I think that definitely helped because it's the last play that the nominating committee probably saw. And when you leave the theater, you're really thinking about the really ingenious concept of the show and the 4 really fantastic acting performances. So I think it didn't hurt at all, and I think it overperformed. I don't know. I had all 4 of the actors getting in, and I had it in for director and for play. So I don't know if it overperformed, but it certainly came out really strong.
That's why I have it winning Best Play right now.
Yeah,
I mean, for one, the fact that it got into lighting design and costume design, they gave her costume design for 4 costumes. They're fabulous costumes, but it's 4 costumes. That's pretty awesome. And it's also like a lot of pundits are saying Oslo has play in the bag, which I don't buy. It could. It's definitely sort of like the big epic. But it's also a 3-hour play about the Oslo Peace Accords, and when some voters hear that, they're going to be like, what? It's just not going to, some people aren't going to go for it. They won't give it a chance, a fair chance. And A Doll's House is sort of like the orange in the bag of apples, or the apple in the bag of orange, whichever way you want to go, in that it doesn't have the like weighty importance factor going for it, which I think Sweat, Indecent, and Oslo are all about sort of, quote, important subject matters and are very heavy dramas, where A Doll's House is not, so that makes it stand out in a very real way.
And I would add to that too that it's kind of dramatic heft is kind of sneaks up on you, where you're spend most of the show laughing, and then it suddenly the floor kind of drops out from underneath you, where you really feel the resonance of the themes and what the play is talking about. Whereas if you go into any of the other three plays, like you said, Sam, you're walking into a dramatic show that has an important message to convey. Whereas Doll's House is a little bit more crafty in its the way it delivers its message.
But you mentioned Oslo, and I got a little quibble with the two of you, because certainly the other day you were quite clear that neither of those leads was going to be nominated. I made my predictions based on that. So both those leads got nominated. How did that happen? How were the two of you, including David Buchanan, who won our contest, so wrong at least 2 days ago? Because I have a feeling at least one of you put at least one of them into their predictions at the last minute.
Me, I put Maze back in at the last minute. I agreed with Sam that I didn't necessarily think that in such a crowded field. I mean, look, for especially in the actress category, there were many women that we could have bumped in and out, and the strength of it. I mean, you had Mary Louise Parker and Allison Janney not get into that category, so I think that was a call that, just based on the strength of the other performances, we were bumping out those two. And look, that's the way the cookie crumbles, Paul.
Yeah, and so.
Bizarre. I just thought it was bizarre. I know there are two Tony winners, but I think if they weren't beloved theater veterans and Tony winners, they would not be in that category. I think it's crazy that someone like Gideon Glick is not there, but Jefferson Mays, who just gets like one emotional moment at the end of the play, got in. If you had asked me after I saw that would both of them be nominated, I'd say no, that's crazy.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I was going to write an article, and I never got around to it because the season really snuck up on us, that there were at least 3 actors this season who appeared in fall and spring productions. Jefferson Mays was in The Front Page and in Oslo. Mary Beth Peel was in Les Liaisons Dangereuses and Anastasia. And Christian Borle was in Falsettos and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and all 3 of them have nominations today. So I think that particularly helped Mays and Mary Beth Peel, and just that they were on the nominating committee's mind in both halves of the season.
That's interesting. It's like at the Oscars, where sometimes you'll get nominated for one movie, but you got another one out. Like
exactly.
You've got like Sandra Bullock, when she wins for Blindside, she also had The Proposal had been a huge hit in the spring. So Laurie Metcalf for the win then, for Best Actress in a Play?
Not a slam dunk. I have her winning.
No?
I think it's between her and Laura Linney. I think that'll be the big climactic diva battle of the Tonys. That I keep expecting to have Allison Janney in there, but Laurie Metcalf and Laura Linney is probably the battle there.
Right, and they really like Little Foxes, right, David? I mean, that did well. I mean, I think I saw, didn't Richard Thomas get his first nomination?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I put him in last night, thinking about, he's done a lot of shows in the last few years and hasn't gotten recognition, and I thought Little Foxes would do well. So I don't know if it's out front for Revival. I think it's going to be between Little Foxes and Jitney, because I could definitely see Jitney winning Revival, Director, and potentially Featured Actor. But I think Little Foxes will win at least one of the acting categories. I think Cynthia Nixon is out front in her category.
So don't count out Jane Howdyshell.
I know, 2 in a row.
The back winner.
Like Judith Light a couple of years ago did back-to-back. And you guys explained to me that even though Laura Linney and Cynthia Nixon are alternating between the leading role and the supporting role, that when it comes to Tony voters, they're only going to get tickets to see them in this version, where Laura Linney's Regina and Cynthia Nixon's Birdie. So I think that's a very smart move. Though I would think if you were a Tony voter who had a little bit of money, and I know people in the theater have just a little bit of money, you'd be curious to see it the other way.
Yeah, they might go back and want to watch it again. In any case, I think Manhattan Theater Club is going to win a revival Tony because it's their two productions. They've been on a roll this season. And I actually have Little Foxes winning revival. I mean, Jitney really overperformed. I don't think anyone ever saw Jitney getting in all three design categories. That was pretty crazy. And so it could be there, but the past closed one of the top categories have really been something that becomes an event, like last year with Eva von Hova's A View from the Bridge, or with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf with Tracy Letts and Carrie Coon.
Yeah.
Those really became like, even after they closed, people wouldn't stop talking about them. That was like a must-see event of the season. I don't know if Jitney has that, like, quite that same level of buzz, especially when MTC has like another currently running show that they can push. And on the money that will come with that, they just announced that it's extending. And so I think, like, given the option, Little Foxes will probably win, but it'll be close.
And now you're making me wonder, sorry, Paul, you're making me wonder if they do go back and see both actresses and they see Richard Thomas in his part twice, does he have an advantage that they get to revisit his performance? If they do. I mean, it's not a guarantee that they do, but.
That's true. I think there's, like, other than Nathan Lane, most of those guys are competitive to win.
Yeah,
they all have a certain narrative. I have Michael Aronov. I think has such a showy, flashy role and could be a way to represent Oslo in case it misses out in other places. But yeah, I mean, Danny DeVito, John Douglas Thompson, Richard Thomas, that's a pretty stacked category.
Yeah.
We mentioned Jefferson Mays is up for Best Actor, but the giant in that category is Kevin Kline, right? He's got 2 Tonys. He's playing this really larger-than-life role, well-received, Noel Coward's Present Laughter. Do either of you see him losing?
That's tough. I mean, it almost seems like he's the winner by default in a way, which makes me a little hesitant. And not to, undersell Kevin Kline. He's fantastic, but he's also playing the type of role that you would picture Kevin Kline doing. He's not coming out and doing something vastly against type of what he's known for. So it sort of seems like, are we just like is he gonna steamroll the whole way through and win everything? Which he very well could. But it's hard to see someone compete with him. Chris Cooper, I mean, A Doll's House Part 2 did very well, but Chris Cooper's probably the least leady, if that's a word. He doesn't have as much stage time as his competitors. And Corey Hawkins, I would say, is fine, but 6 Degrees really, really underperformed. Missed Allison Janney. It missed all the design categories, which I was very shocked by. And even in featured actor, John Benjamin Hickey can break through. So I don't know if there's enough support for that to decline. I think he's probably just going to sit pretty the whole way.
Well, it's been fun. What to sort of talk about nominations before and after, and certainly we'll get together and talk about wins. So I'm just in closing, I'm curious for both of you, if there was one that you were just thrilled to see, and I think Sam, you've already talked about Michelle Wilson for Sweat, and then somebody that you were equally disappointed not to be in there. So we'll start with Sam, and then we'll end with David because he did win. So Sam, who was your yay? Was Michelle Wilson your yay moment when you were hearing the nominations?
I didn't predict her, but I think actually Ava Noblezada from Miss Saigon was I was most happy for. That's the most recent show I just saw, and she is absolutely phenomenal. You can't believe such a powerful voice is coming out of such a tiny body. She is just a force to be reckoned with. Incredibly powerful performance. And I think I have many people I'm angry that aren't there, but my tastes often diverge. I think my number, like a Mad Gideon Glick isn't there for a Significant Other. I just was saying the other day, like if that play was still open, I feel like he should be a front runner for Best Actor. But the real person I'm angry at is Simon McBurney. I know The Encounter probably wasn't for everyone, but I thought it's something insanely unique that you really don't get to see on Broadway. They did get they're getting a special Tony, the sound designers anyway. But I thought McBurney's performance, like the sound aspect, I think maybe took away some of the buzz from the actual acting that was going on stage. And I mean, he made me believe I was in the freaking jungle with nothing on stage. He just did it with his body. It was an incredible performance. So those are probably my two, Simon McBurney and Ava Noblezada for my yay.
And Dave, some producers calling David to try and get him.
That's right. I'm signing a 6-figure book deal as we speak. So
who was your yay and boo?
So it's this two sides of the same coin. So the very first category that they announced was actor in a play, and when they called Dennis Arndt's name, I was ecstatic because I really didn't think that they were going to remember his performance just because it had been so long ago, and because he's been doing this for a heck of a long time, and to see him finally reach this level and this recognition was just wonderful. And I just want to comment too that when Heisenberg started off Broadway, Brian Cox was supposed to play his role, and Brian Cox had to step out, and Dennis stepped in to take over, and that's just been such a gift for him, and his performance was fantastic. The other side of that coin, my biggest disappointment is that Mary Louise Parker didn't get in for the same play, which I thought was going to be more likely, even though I didn't predict her. I thought of the two, she had the name and the acclaim to potentially get in. And for me, the two performances were so in sync that it's really hard to nominate one and not the other. So I was so disappointed that she didn't get in. And after a really long absence from contending at the Tonys, I thought it would be a great welcoming back for her in such a fantastic role. So I'm sad that didn't happen, but really excited for Dennis Arndt.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, listen, we'll definitely talk again before the Tonys are handed out on June 11th, so that everyone that's watching this can start making their predictions. And one thing they can do is look at our top 24 people that made predictions, because people like me that are experts, well, obviously we're not such experts because these two did better. And so if you go into the top 24 and you can find these two as well as 22 others, but I have a feeling you've got to keep an eye on both of these, because right up until probably half an hour before the winners are announced, they'll be switching around and changing and moving. So that's it. But you can keep doing that at Gold Derby. You can keep changing your predictions right up until that first envelope is opened. And hopefully they have the right name in it. Thanks, guys.
Color-coded. Thank you.